Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of All the Places We'll Go with your hosts, Richie and Mark. Now, look, today we have Craig Fenton on the show. He's the Director of Strategy and Operations for Google. Now, Craig is an absolute cracker of a guest, and we're really privileged to have you on this morning, Craig. So thank you for taking the time. Craig's sort of list of things, of achievements go on and on, but he's been an entrepreneur, an investor, a mentor, and even a founder. And in fact, kind of meshes all these things together at the same time whilst working for Google as well. So I don't know where you get the time, Craig, but we'll come on to that. Look, Craig has got a real passion for business and technology, and he's worked in the industry for over 20 years. Although, interestingly, it's not where he started. So there's some interesting stuff around pivoting, which I'm sure we will talk about this morning as well. Finally, Craig, and perhaps really interesting to me, is the fact he actually created his own record label called Big Community Records. And it's an independent record label to support talented artists of lower socioeconomic backgrounds and areas. So, Craig, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show this morning. And over to Mark for the first question.
Yes, thanks, Richie. And as Richie says, fantastic to have you on the show, Craig. So just to get us started, tell us, where are you and how are you?
Where am I and how? I'm in my home office. Welcome to Google Home, or at least Craig's home. And I'm based in London here. How am I? I'm great. You know, my health is good. My family's health is good. You know, I'm standing in a well-equipped home office, and you know, I feel very privileged. It's been a kind of a crazy year, but you know, I've got a job, and I'm grateful to be able to work with others, and hopefully give others an opportunity to survive first of all, and then thrive as we emerge out of this.
Craig, you say that you're in the Google Home Office. I love that phrase. How's that been? I mean, how's that transition been for you? I mean, the word on the street is Google has got slides in their office, so you know, maybe a transition to home is quite dramatic.
We definitely don't have slides in this office, in my home office. I think my wife was pretty nervous about me being at home so much. So that was the first challenge, to get used to me being sort of scurrying around the house the whole time. I'm enjoying the short commute. It's just up the stairs, so that's nice, and it helps with productivity. Took me a while to sort of tune the home working gear, get the right desk, a bit of a standing desk, and a couple of monitors, and you know, and some lights, and hopefully the technology will hold up during our chat today. But it's been good, you know. It's a little tough being on video the whole time, don't you find? But you know, we've found ways of bringing that to life as well.
Yeah, we obviously have to apologise for not using any sort of. Well, actually, we're live on YouTube, but for using Zoom, I know that must be sort of slightly painful, but apologies. So, I mean, you've just given a hint at what a crazy year this has been, and it's been, you know, full of ups and downs for everybody. If you could fast forward maybe 5 years and say, try to explain to somebody in 5 years' time what 2020 has been as a year, how would you describe 2020 in the rearview mirror?
What a great question. I think it's caused change, but I would say change in the form of acceleration. I think a lot of the things that have happened this year have happened just more quickly than they were happening anyway, whether it be in business, sort of pivoting more to an online customer experience. Obviously, that's been a necessity during the periods of lockdown that we've had. Moving to a more flexible working style, I think that was a trend already that was in existence. And perhaps an increased consciousness on the things that we really value. Things like the local high street and the small businesses on it. And each other, how society can come together. You know, the disease is awful, but it's a great leveler as well. It's common to all of us. And I think the way that the communities have responded in the UK and around the world is remarkable. I was on a call yesterday. I was doing a CEO roundtable yesterday, and many of the CEOs were talking from different industries about how they've managed finally to do things that they've been stuck on for years. And we were actually talking about, you know, how do you sort of lock that can do no barriers mindset in amber, and make sure that it's not just an ephemeral and passing thing, but something that endures beyond the crisis. So I think we'll look back on this year as as an unfortunate sort of impact on humanity at a number of levels, but also a disruptive shock that produced many good behaviours as well.
Craig, I think we can't continue this conversation around this current time without acknowledging that this week has pretty much been a monumental week in the fight of COVID, with the announcement of the vaccine and a real positive sort of news stories coming out of that. And I guess some people are sort of craving to get some sense of normality, whatever that kind of means, back in their lives. So what do you think would be some of the key things that, maybe talking about it from your perspective or even from Google's perspective, about what you think will kind of stay and perhaps moving into 21 and beyond? And what do you think are some of the things that will sort of, kind of was a passing moment in time?
I hope many of the positive things I talked about will stay and endure, whether it be this sort of flexibility. I think companies that were already office bound to recognise that productivity can go up in this working from home, or indeed working from anywhere environment. I think all of us have sort of discovered new things online, whether it be entertainment or shopping, or exploring the world in a virtual way, educating. These are possibilities that I think will endure at a new level beyond. And I think also this sort of consciousness and value that we place on the local businesses around us, and particularly I really miss restaurants. And as soon as the latest lockdown ended, my wife and I were out, enjoying a meal out, and I think it's so important to protect and enhance that. There's one more thing that I really hope endures, and that's the sense of innovation. I think necessity is obviously the mother of invention, and we've seen remarkable innovation during this period. Businesses pivoting to curbside pickup and other forms of delivering their service or their product. In music, where all of the live events have been cancelled, we saw the biggest live concert in history, Travis Scott, appearing on the Fortnite gaming platform in front of 27 million people over the course of a week. The previous record for a big live concert was 250,000. So these are the sorts of innovations that are sparked by the forces of necessity, and I hope they'll endure.
That's fantastic. You talk about discovery of new things, and I think obviously this has been a hotbed of innovation this year. But in terms of discovery, what do you think you've discovered new about yourself through these times?
I think it gives you a sense of perspective, and I found myself sort of stepping back and really examining the things that I truly value in life, and kind of living a little bit more in the moment. So I live reasonably close to Wimbledon Common, which is a big park in southwest London, and just going for a walk in the park and admiring the trees and the nature around us, even when you're in the city, has been just a source of great joy. The local businesses around us having a job, and being in a position to give others that opportunity is a great privilege, and so important. And of course, first and foremost, probably family and health. My parents, as you can probably tell from my accent, are far away. They're in New Zealand, and I've not been able to see them in the last year, and won't be able to do the annual pilgrimage back over the Christmas period either. So you value family as well, and it's been a wonderful opportunity also in House Party or Zoom or Google Meet or whatever your preferred platform is, to actually have social meetings with people that you otherwise wouldn't meet from different countries, and that's been a sort of new thing and something I value, sort of those friendships.
Craig, it's really refreshing that you said that it's a privilege that you still have a job. But by no means is it a coincidence that you are where you are today, because it's been an insane amount of hard work having researched your journey. Clearly starting out as a barrister in the early days, but love to hear it from you about join some of the dots of your career, to the point where you've landed up as one of the head honchos of Google.
Yeah, Richie, you've outed me. I'm a recovering lawyer. I spent the first 6 years of my professional career as a barrister and solicitor. It's a fused bar in New Zealand, but I did court work. So I had a horse's hair wig and the black gown and the tabs, and I did commercial litigation, mostly in a little bit of deal work. And it was a wonderful experience. Teaches you sort of advocacy, attention to detail, and that sort of thing. But I knew I didn't want to be a career lawyer. I've always been a bit of a gadget geek. I've been now in technology for 20 years, first with Accenture, now with Google. The roots for that are quite deep with me. I grew up in a country that at the time had 3 million people, pre-internet. You had to sit on an aircraft for 8 hours to reach a country other than Australia. And my father, who was an entrepreneur, had his own business. He used to travel a lot and do buying trips. And I remember really clearly going to the airport with my mum, smelling the avgas and having this sense of excitement, this exotic, far away, opportunity that to me at the time felt both intoxicating, but also somewhat unattainable and unreachable. And the reason I'm in technology is that I think it's sort of broken down those barriers. It's a great democratizer, and still today the fact that we can with just a smartphone and a good idea start a micro multinational business or become a creator, do a podcast like you guys are doing and find an audience globally, that still to me is just like magic. And I find it wonderful that it's democratized talent and democratized entrepreneurship as well. I think it's a wonderful thing.
So it seems like that from a very, very early age, that sort of sense of adventure and exploration was deep rooted. Fascinating that it comes from kind of being from an isolated island. So is that really what caused your pivots in your career? Because you've done some career pivots, and sometimes that's forced, sometimes that's by choice. Moving from law to management consultancy to technology, to so many different flips. Tell us a little bit about how you've moved through those pivots.
I could probably stand here, Mark, and look back and explain my career as a carefully planned and surgically executed journey with milestones that have come exactly when I wanted them along the way. And in my case, at least, that would be absolute nonsense. It's what mathematicians would call a stochastic walk, a sort of random stumbling, and punctuated by opportunity and timing and luck along the way, and a little bit of hard work. If there's a golden thread that sort of links it all, links the sort of wild archipelago that I've been on, it's kind of, I've always been quite determined to do what I really enjoy, that I feel I'm sort of uncomfortably learning in, and when that is no longer true, to change it. So if there's any sort of golden thread that joins it all up, it's that one.
Craig, you came over to the UK having had a successful legal career, but the route you chose to come through was to do an MBA at London Business School. So I'm going to ask perhaps the proverbial question that most young people ask: is an MBA worth it?
Well, I think the answer today is different than it was certainly when I did it, which is 22 years ago. For me, it was because, keep in mind, I was a lawyer, I was a barrister at the time, I was interested in business. It was essentially the dawn of the internet, crazy new companies with massive valuations and many failures along the way. And I knew I wanted to be part of that, but I didn't know how. So the MBA for me was kind of a rebranding. It was a retraining of sorts, although I did do a commerce degree in an undergraduate. So partially a retraining, but mostly it was a rebranding. It was a mechanism, a conduit by which I could transition and pivot in my career and then walk out credibly and say, okay, now I'm going to be in business, whereas before I was in law. And that was the story of many in my cohort, many engineers or doctors or people who have come from different professions wanting to get somehow into business or banking or whatever it was. I have this conversation a lot with young people who are sort of thinking about an MBA or even a tertiary qualification following school. And I think the options available today are so much broader. And I think the main thing that you've got to be is really clear on the why. Why am I doing this, right? If it's to go deeply learn something, keep in mind you can deeply learn something on the job as well. There are wonderful apprenticeships, for example, out there. I think you guys offer one yourselves, and you're going to learn a lot on the job. You can throw yourself into your own company. I guarantee you'll learn a lot there. So it's not the only vehicle for learning. If you wanted to sort of just take a couple of years out, or however long the course is, and just sort of spend that time feeding your brain, it's a great option for that. It's a pretty expensive option as well. So I think there are lots of different motivations, and you've just got to be clear on the why and where it's all leading, and be aware also of all of the options, all the other options that are available. I think equally as valid as university these days.
Yeah, I think it's, as you say, many more options. In some ways, a bit more bewildering for people about what to do. And you know, at the School of Marketing, the great job that Richie does leading that company is to try and help some people through that fog. Now this show is about undulations and recovery and setbacks and so on. So can you tell us a time maybe when you found yourself at your lowest ebb, and what it was that got you out of that situation?
Yeah, there's been lots of peaks and valleys, I suppose. And one of them, I'll stay with the theme of university. You know, I'd made a pretty bold move, age 28, to move to the other side of the world, different hemisphere. I was living at the time on borrowed New Zealand dollars, which were 3 to 1 to the pound at the time, slightly different now. And, you know, and that was scary. It was scary and exciting all at the same time. Brand new community, you know, that I was building. My girlfriend at the time, now wife, had come with me, and she was supporting me actually through this. And I struck out during the middle of the MBA, starting to do these job interviews, right, to try and get an internship. And I kept a record of them. I had over 100 interviews, and many of the companies had multiple interviews each, of course. And I also collected what we called at the time the ding letters, the no's. And I reached 55. I had 55 rejections during that period, having literally sold the farm, moved hemisphere, you know, bet all of my savings on this new course. And here I was sort of stacking up tens and tens. And well, thanks for your interest in the application. The answer is no. And I suppose after a time, you build a resistance, a numbness to this, and it becomes rather comical in the end. But the great thing about the interview process is that it's very much two-way. So if you get a no from a company or an employer or an opportunity, it's usually a pretty good indication it probably wasn't the right thing for you anyway. So sort of reframing that in a positive way, and just treating it as part of the wild journey was important to me at the time. Happily, I did land a job in the end through perseverance, but it was pretty low. It felt a bit depressing at one stage.
You know, Craig, it sounds when you describe the no's as part of that, it sounds like, you know, data is at the heart of everything that you sort of do, and perhaps you've landed your dream job on that basis, because clearly Google is probably the ultimate data-driven organization. But through that and through your day job, shall we say, you do so many other things, you know, a range of different side hustles. What motivates you to do that? And you probably clearly have, you know, more than enough to handle in your day job. What gives you the motivation to do some of those other things on the side?
Yeah, so Google is very much the day job. It keeps me very busy. But for me, Richie, it's more about balance. You know, I do different things for balance. I find variety exciting. I like to be sort of comfortably uncomfortable, if you see what I mean, and sort of learning new stuff and trying new stuff on the side. My wife describes me as an active relaxer. Okay, so a lot of these side hustles sort of emerge from that. So I'm an active angel investor. I've got 10 small startups in my portfolio that I've invested in. I do that because I get a lot of energy from working with young entrepreneurs and helping them on their journey and learning from them actually, hopefully as much, probably more than they learn from me. Lots of different businesses there, and it's a wild ride. Let's see if I've picked them well. Only time will tell on that. I've got this little YouTube channel. I try to meet 2 or 3 new people each week, and after a while I sort of thought, well, why not film it and share it, because I really do meet some really remarkable people. And so that was a hobby and experiment in sharing inspiration. It's called Coffee, Eggs and Inspiration, the channel, by the way. You know, I do that once a week, 1 video a week. And it's been a great opportunity for me also to play with Google's technology, in this case, YouTube, and experience it from a creator's point of view. So I do all of the filming, although I could get help, I don't. I do all of the filming, editing, and publishing only on my smartphone. A little bit different now with the sort of, I use a home setup, of course, during COVID. But I deliberately chose to do that because I wanted to learn how to do it and experiment with different microphones, angles, lighting, and this sort of thing, and some light advertising, not just on our platforms, but on competing platforms like Facebook and Instagram and so on. So that's that. I have a hobby which is flying. I'm a pilot, I'm a qualified pilot, so I fly planes. And that's a really interesting thing. It's very cognitively intense. You have to be very much in the cockpit and focusing only on that. But I like it because it's completely different from what I do during the day, right? So you know, it really does take you to a different place. And you know, the record label, Richie, that you mentioned at the start, Big Community Records, I started that sort of accidentally, fell into it actually, through a mentoring relationship I had with a young man who was a passionate artist, musician from South London, didn't really have the oxygen to breathe, so to speak. And I felt he deserved a chance. So I set up a record label and I signed him. And we set out on a journey to realize his dream, which was to release an album. And that album, called Blood on the English Carpet, came out in July this year, right in the middle of lockdown. Check it out.
So, Craig, I'm sort of slightly out of breath just listening to the amazing variety of things that you do. So it's a slightly existential question. You know, what is enough?
What is enough? Well, my wife helps me sort of keep the right sort of barriers up. I'm very happy to report I'm still married, so I've obviously got that balance about right at the moment. You know, I think in life it's important to do things that are playful and interesting. So I try to sort of throw myself into something, and the less well I understand it, if I'm interested in it, obviously that's threshold criteria, but the less the less informed I am on it, the better in a way, because it becomes an adventure. And I think life is an adventure, isn't it? And so long as I'm interested and motivated to do new things, I guess I'll keep doing them. Obviously, there's so many hours in a day, so I need to sort of contain it in that way. But you know, hopefully the adventurous spirit will never abate.
You know, and I guess, Craig, as part of the you know, the culture that Google has, it allows you, and it probably allows so many others like you, to do these range of variety of different things. I mean, does that sort of ring true? I mean, so the Google's reputation as a culture is quite renowned. Do you think internally that really kind of they do let you foster all these various angles that you pursue?
Yeah, very much so. You know, I love Google. It's a great company to work for. I believe in the mission and the moral compass of the company as well, which is important. And one of the things they do is encourage you to play. There's a concept called 20% time. And notionally, it's, you know, if you've got a passion and interest that you want to work on, feel free to do so and do it on company time. You know, don't go berserk with it, but, you know, hence 20% time. And a lot of people do that. It doesn't necessarily need to be anything related to work. So I guess you'd say my YouTube channel is an example of 20% time. It's a hobby. I'm not doing it certainly to make money individually. It's not going to be particularly helpful for Google, but it's an interesting exploration for me. And many of the innovations actually that have emerged in Google have come out of 20% time. Gmail was the invention of an engineer who didn't like the email system that we were using way back when. So he went and tinkered and built Gmail, which has now got 2 billion users globally. And there are many other examples of innovations that sort of came from that 20% time. I'm very grateful to Google for giving us the sort of scope and freedom to do that.
So Google has done some amazing things, is doing some amazing things. I noticed the other day the carbon legacy, sort of not just offsetting today and going forward, but also undoing everything from the past. We've had Ronan Harris on before, and Google sometimes takes a bit of a bashing. I've actually been in research groups where we've been discussing Google, and people love it and hate it at the same time. It's a weird thing that they love the usage of it, but there's this sort of notion of a spectre of their power and influence. And so how do you sort of reconcile in your mind or internalize the fact that customs have this sort of slightly jumbled up relationship with your organization?
I think it's part of the course, and Ronan's my key business partner. We talk about it a lot. The scale of the business and the ubiquitous nature of the products that are sort of somehow embedded in our lives give us both opportunity to impact the economy and help it recover, and small businesses to set up and thrive, and for people to get a social message out there, largely unedited and uncensored. But it also is a great responsibility, and it's one that we absolutely embrace and accept. And I think the scrutiny is totally appropriate, and we welcome it, and we try to engage positively with it. It can be a bit intense. It's a very intense spotlight that's on us the whole time. As I said, it's one that's welcome and appropriate, and the scrutiny is good. I think it makes us better, but it's not always easy.
Craig, I'm going to ask. I'm going to get a sneaky, cheeky question, and then maybe ask a more sensible one. But every time I've seen you do a podcast or webcast, you're always standing up. Is that your status quo in meetings as well when you're working from your home office? Is that the sort of what you do?
It is, yeah. I get more energy when I'm standing up, and I feel like I can talk and project better. I'm a bit of a gesticulator, as you can see, and it's nice to be able to walk around. Also, I'm conscious of my incredibly sedentary lifestyle. I'm not doing as much exercise as I used to. So apparently they tell me you burn calories if you stand up, certainly more so than you sit down. I do have a seat. I have a desk that goes up and down, but I prefer to stand up in meetings. You're right. Good observation, Richie.
But it's really cool and interesting. And actually, I've been researching the health benefits of it, and there's so many, and especially it actually lets a lot of people think more sort of fluidly as well. And I can see that you are sort of almost rotating yourself. So you're not standing still, but you're kind of. And I think that's perhaps part of that. So anyway, I thought I would ask. But the more serious question is clearly, as part of your community builder and creator, what are some of the kind of key things that you picked up on about building a community, fostering that, getting some amazing people on, and what advice would you have for people who are perhaps thinking about trying to grow their personal brands and perhaps becoming a creator, growing a community?
Well, I'll start with the community aspect as I sort of interpret it, and I'll talk about the social media footprint, which is, I think, the second part of your question as well. On the community part, and Big Community Records was born from this ethos, I think talent and creativity is reasonably evenly spread in humanity, but opportunity isn't. There are many sections of our society, both in urban centres and rural areas around the country, where that opportunity just isn't getting through. There's poverty, there's a lack of information, there's a lack of positive role models, there's a lack of just sort of the basics that many of us who have had a more privileged upbringing take for granted. And I think the beauty about society is that you can build these bridges. And I've gone deliberately into areas where I think have this sort of absence of oxygen, to do what I can. I sort of start with, okay, what can I individually do to change at least one person's life dramatically? And I go from there. And that's where big community records came from. And, you know, here's the thing. People listening to this are probably thinking, well, that's a sort of very altruistic and noble thing to do. It is, but it's also selfish, because I learn an enormous amount from people who have had a really hard upbringing and a completely different experience growing up than I have. You know, give me somebody who's been molded by the contours of a hard life and hard knocks and developed the depth of character and resilience to make it through any day of the week. I want that person by my side. I think it's brilliant, and I just draw so much. These are the things that you can't learn and don't learn from the red brick universities and private schools around the country. So I'm a big believer in sort of building these bridges, and it's immensely fulfilling to do it. If you've not done it, I would encourage you just to ask yourself, is there one person that I can go and help and change the course of their life? And almost always the answer to that is yes. As it relates to social media, because I think that was your at least the second part of your question, Richie, my main social media platform is LinkedIn. I love it. I think it's a great professional, I use it for professional purposes, obviously, great professional platform. And what I love about LinkedIn is the way that you can spark a dialogue and get a conversation going. I meet most of the new people I meet every week contacts through LinkedIn. I probably get 10 or 20 investor decks from entrepreneurs each week through LinkedIn. And we have some wonderful conversations over the course of, you know, the last months. I've had dialogues with many people about education and the future of education, how to prepare young people and not so young people for a different future, about entrepreneurship, about music, about creativity and the importance of that in business and in the arts. And you know, I think if you're sort of genuinely in it for the right reasons and there to draw from a community and create a movement or a moment around the topic, then, you know, the footprint will grow. And, you know, that's why I do it and how I do it. I don't go chasing numbers, you know, for the sake of numbers. I like the community aspect of it, as you embedded in your question.
It's a lovely thought, just to rewind a couple of minutes, about helping one person in their life, improving one person's life. If I may say so, you're very composed. You're very zen. And there's a lovely comment, and I'm going to get the name wrong terribly, from either Joke or Joke or Yoke, apologies. But it said, Craig's ambience is well thought through. I'm learning. Thank you so much. So you are very zen. So I'm just intrigued to know what really pisses you off.
Oh wow! I didn't expect that question. Thank you. Thank you, Yoke, for the comment on ambience and zen. I've never really thought of myself as zen. What pisses me off? Well, I try to sort of frame everything in a positive lens. So you've really got me thinking about that. It's very tempting to talk about politics, but I'll stay away from that. You know, that's a subject. I get irritated where people have a position of privilege and power and don't use it for a positive purpose. That really annoys me. I don't think it's an acceptable part of being part of humanity and in a community. And I think during COVID, we've seen some remarkable stories of the opposite, of people really sort of digging in and linking arms and helping. And when you have the brain and the position and the power and don't use it in a positive way, that really annoys me, and I don't like it. What else? I mean, well, you know, like all of us, I'm getting a bit sick of the lockdown. You know, we're social animals. I wouldn't say that's sort of pissing me off more than sort of just it's a frustration. I think it's probably one that's pretty widely shared. But you know, we've got to follow the guidelines and follow the science. Other than that, yeah, I can't put my finger on anything. There are trigger points here and there, but I try to be quite positive in life.
I'll hand to Richie in a sec, but just one follow up there. I mean, that's a brilliant answer, because the notion of privilege has only really emerged in 2020. You know, it's a bit of a wake up call for everybody. Just as it goes, we'll find a way, Richie, to get it out. But I came across a great survey this week, which asks you 30 questions. If you answer yes to 30, you'll get a score of 30. No to 30, you'll get a score of -30. And it talks about the privilege you had in your life. And I was on this webinar, and it ranged from people in the high 20s to the low 20s. Some people had answered yes to only one or two of these questions about their lives. And it was a massive eye-opener to register in me the privilege I've had. So we'll find a way, Richie, to get it out to the community. But you raised a fantastic point. What better thing to be annoyed about in the world than the fact that people don't use their privilege and influence to help others? So fantastic, thank you. Sorry, Richie, back to you.
No, not at all. I mean, I think it's part of that. I just wanted to kind of follow up on that. And if someone is thinking about, help or trying to help, I mean, often, people are well intended, but either it ends up in unintended consequences, or they just don't know how. What kind of things would you say to somebody who's thinking about, trying to make someone else's life better?
Well, other than the obvious, which is sort of to work with local charities and volunteer organisations, I would say there's a lot that you can sort of do on a personal mission. Be open to mentorship. My experience is that mentorship is very much two-way, and I think I learn more from my mentees than they probably do from me, or at least an equal amount. So be open to that. Spend some time pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. It's super easy to be sort of suburb locked and keep going back to the same bars and the same restaurants and the same things. Take your partner or your significant other or your family and go explore Camden or Hackney or Brixton or a different part of Manchester or Liverpool, wherever it is you're watching from, the city that you're in, and discover and talk to people. Once we're back and able to circulate more freely, I think we'll start to really value the interactions that we've lost. And it's not necessarily not necessary to sort of sit on the tube or the public transport and sort of look straight ahead or at your phone. You can actually have a conversation. Some people might think you're a bit weird, but if you just strike up a conversation and be open to that, you never know where that might lead you. And that was my story. I sort of started talking to a chap, and he turned out to be homeless, and peeled back the layers and found out more about him, and I was able to help him in a way get back into housing and get a job, get his identification back, and this sort of thing. And it made a big difference for him, and it didn't cost me anything in terms of time or money, really significantly. So just be open to having those conversations, I'd say.
So you're a young fit guy. You've got many years ahead. What do you, when you look to the future, what's on the bucket list unfulfilled as yet, maybe?
Mark, I officially love you for calling me young and fit. I'm not so young. I hope I'm a little bit fit. What's on the road ahead? Well, who knows? I think. Are you guys with me? Can you hear me? Yeah. Cool. Who knows? I kind of like to. I'm really intrigued about film. I'd like to make a movie, I think. And not personally, but I know some great people who would dream of making a movie. The person I used to create the music videos for the records that we just released dreams of this. He's a Zimbabwean immigrant who saved up, bought himself a computer, taught himself how to code, and then how to do special effects. And his dream is to make a movie. So I think I might try and make a movie next year, a short movie. At least. I don't know anything about that, and I think it might be quite fun. I'm thinking about getting a small home recording studio, not to record myself because I can't sing and I'm not musical at all. But I kind of like the idea of playing with music, building a beat, and learning how to do the composition and production side of things. I think that'd be a cool project. And yeah, maybe taking my YouTube channel in some new directions and experimenting with different sort of content and formats. That's always fun as well.
Wow. It sounds like at the heart of everything you do, there's a sense of creativity and curiosity that really plays central to that thought process that you have. I mean, do you think that's sort of an essential skill moving forward for people to kind of embody and engender?
100%, Richie. So look, moon landing was 50 years ago, right? Modern computing, 35, internet's 22, smartphone came out 13 years ago, machine learning in a sort of practical sense, 5 years. Last year, quantum computing, last week, protein folding. So these sort of compression cycles of innovation are getting closer together and more material. And COVID's just sort of put all of that on steroids. So we can't predict what's happening in January, let alone what's happening in 3 years' time. But the fact is that change is constant. And if you live in a world that's changing the whole time, then the ability to remain adaptable, agile, to embrace a life of learning and pivots, to see around those corners, imagine a future that's different from today, and then go create it. These are superpowers, and they're all different words for describing a really core piece of humanity, which is creativity, imagination applied in a valuable way. So I think that the skill and comfort to operate with creativity in that ever-changing environment will be the superpower, and it will separate the great from the good. So, my advice is to nurture that side of your brain in whatever way. I express my creativity in business. Others express it in art or dance or music, but nurture that side of your brain. It's more important than ever.
Coming from the man who works for probably the greatest data-driven organization in the world, saying put creativity at the heart of your skill set. I mean, how does that marry up?
Well, I think the digital age is more than ever a human age. I'll say it again, the digital age is more than ever a human age. Technology in and of itself has zero value. It's just a tool. What's important is how it's applied. And that comes from the imagination, right? Computers aren't imaginative. People are. And the great asset in Google is not the technology that we all use day in, day out. It's the people and the process and the culture that creates it. So I see it as incredible. I see it as absolutely aligned. And as I say, technology is an enabler. It's a tool. It's a context. It's ever changing, but it's coming from people. And that's why the technology age is a human age.
Love that.
Well, wow. It's 8:45 UK time anyway. This has gone by in a blink of an eye. I think there's many unanswered questions, but unfortunately we do have to come to a close. So it remains to say a few words, do a bit of a wrap and a massive thank you. Craig, so I'm very struck by the way that you can balance multiple things. So you talked about humanity and digital. You've obviously got a wide portfolio career, and you hold sort of, ambition, but in the right way, very, very, very nicely. I'll also take away the Zen thing, obviously, but probably most of all, a general sense of adventure, which probably started, as you said, as a child on an island 8,000 miles away from anything. I like the way you say other than Australia, sort of, let's discount that. But anyway, it's, that sense of adventure, which you're clearly carrying as strongly as you ever did, and I'm sure you will in the future. So loads of very, very lovely insights today. Really been hugely your experience, and very, very grateful to have you on the show. So I'll hand to Richie to do a thank you and outro as well. But thank you very much, Craig, from me and on behalf of everybody else.
Thank you, Mark.
And Craig, I mean, too many highlights for me, but the things that I've really taken away is the way that you coin buzz terms. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, active relaxer was a good one by your missus. Micro multinational, another one which I thought was just brilliant. Digital, is a human thing, is in the human era. And I think all these things for me really just, sort of stick in the mind. And I think that's part of the charm of it. Really kind of glue it in my mind and solidify that thinking. So really, really appreciate your time today, Craig. It's been an absolute pleasure, and really look forward to continuing the conversation on many other occasions as well.
My pleasure, Richie. I love what you guys are doing with this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. Just as a very quick outro, guys, as you know, we are here every week, 8 a.m., Friday mornings on the All the Places Will Go show. Next week, we've got John Wilkins, who is the current global managing director of the Creative Council at Accenture Interactive. He was also, prior to that, he was also the chairman of Karmarama and the founder and chairman of Naked Communications as well. So if you want to hear from his perspective, be sure to tune in next Friday at 8. But for now, have a great weekend, everyone.